Good morning, good morning. Just wanted to give a quick webcast here. I just had some thoughts this morning and wanted to get it out. So I'm a little disorganized in it, but I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts on video and get some input from what everyone's thinking. But one of the things as a coach, as a teacher, a mentor that we're always trying to figure out is what drives people internally. What's going to give them the best success, not only internally, but externally, to make sure that we set everyone up for success so they can be the best person and reach their potential is what our goal is every day. And one of the things that kind of brought back into my memory when I went through a mentorship, and I got to give Gary Gray all the credit on this, is that we're driven by three different sciences. And what I did is I kind of put this up here. If you can see it a little bit, I'm kind of backwards, but I'm going to try to do it here. It's physical sciences, behavioral sciences, and then biological sciences. So I want to talk about those three just a little bit because I think it's important when we talk about dominating our space and how each one of these things kind of plays such a role in that phase. So let's look at the physical sciences first. And I think the physical sciences is kind of our environment, right? The environment that we're in. We have gravity and ground reaction force and mass momentum, but we also have, the floor, the peril that we're in, anything that requires the environment, the speed and velocity of a ball coming in, all those types of things are as environment. So I'm hitting the ball in the baseball, the speed, the other people's potential and what they're able to do. All those types of things are physical things. Things are relatively out of our control, right? Especially in a game situation. So those are obviously what drives us a lot in our performance because it's a huge part of the game or environment. So the next thing I want to talk about is the biological side. So I'm going to come over here to the biological side here and talk about that. That's the one as a strength conditioning coach we try to kind of emphasize the most. We talk about, we got to move in 3 planes of motion and, how well can you do that? What's your mobility in each joint? What's your stability in each joint? What's your strength? What's your power? What's your endurance? How's your cardiovascular system work? What's your nervous system do? All the internal things that we try to train with somebody in our environment. So that's obviously a massive piece of how we perform as well. And then there's probably the most important piece of the puzzle is the whole behavioral, which is over on this side. Sorry, it's over on this side, the behavioral side, and that's obviously what drives us through our brain, through our heart, and through our soul. I think is big. What motivates us? What drives us? What shuts us down? What gives us confidence? What gives us not confidence? What kind of environment is that? What what am I empowered by? How am I being encouraged? What sets me back mentally? All those types of things. So the three sciences, the physical, the biological, and behavioral, that kind of sums up how we perform. And at the end of the day, I think it's an equilateral triangle. I think they all play a very specific and very important part of the way we perform. So I think that when we look at it, we can have, we can be, from a sports perspective, let's say for a minute, the biological side over here, we could have all the skill and all the mobility and stability and power, and we could be just the best mover in the world and super strong. But at the end of the day, if our behavioral science is low, we're not encouraged, we don't have good empowerment, we're not motivated, we're not driven in the environment, then our triangle has to be smaller, because if one spot of the triangle comes in, the whole triangle has to shrink, right? Because the triangle has to stay equilateral. Now, to go back to the dominate your space, we want the biggest triangle possible. If we have, let's say it's a basketball game, and we have 11 or 5 guys out on the floor that have a huge, in all 3 buckets here, then we're going to take up a big piece of the court, and we're going to be really dominant in that game. But all it takes is for one of these buckets to shrink, and then they all shrink, right? So if all of a sudden we decide that we're not going to empower our team anymore, or we decide that mobility is not important anymore in the physical side, or we believe that the empowerment, we just don't have it today, or whatever it may be, we got to make sure that all 3 sciences continue to grow. So that's my 2 cents on today. We want the equilateral triangle. We want to make it as big as we possibly can, but we can't just focus on one bucket. We have to have all 3 buckets. And the bucket of the game is obviously the physical science side. That's the environment that we're in. And to be in the biggest environment possible, which as you win and as you get to the tournament, watch the state finals this weekend in football, obviously that physical environment is very demanding. And the people that get there are the ones that have the behavioral bucket and the biological bucket mastered. So, thought of the day, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.